Hello, my name is Joanne from 123stitch.com. First of all, I want to thank everyone who voted on our recent poll for which video you'd like to see me do next. Most people chose how to use the sewing method on a project bag. So that's what I'm going to do today. And if you want to vote in future polls, check out the community tab on our YouTube page. Now, Mad for Plaid project bags are my favorite thing. They're by It's Sew Emma, and they come in two sizes, the regular size and a mini bag. I use them to hold cross-stitch and embroidery projects, thread, needle, and even non-stitching items. They have these little holes on them that let you stitch on them. It's just perfect for it. Now, I've got a few that I've already finished. The patterns were by Shepherd's Bush. This one is called Queen Bee. This one is called Stitch. And then I just finished the Liberty mini bag. They're a lot of fun to stitch on. They are quick and easy. They also make great gifts. But the problem is, how do you stitch on them? These little bitty bags, if you're stitched the normal way, how do you get your hand and your needle in and out of there? On the big bags, they're really deep, so your arm would be all the way in there. Well, the solution is to use the sewing method. With the sewing method, you're primarily on the top side of the bag. So it's much easier. It's actually quicker. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. How to start and end your thread. I'll show you how to do the sewing method, and then I'll also come across a few issues you may encounter. First of all, go down below. Are you subscribed to our channel? If you're not, then click on that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Let's get started. Okay, I'm going to be demonstrating today on a mini bag, and most of these designs use number 5 pearl cotton, which is really nice because you just use a single strand floss. We are going to be stitching over 2 threads or over 2 holes on this bag, so the X's are going to be quite large. I am using a size 22 tapestry needle. I find that is perfect for number 5 pearl cotton because the eye is big enough to thread the needle and it fits easily through the holes. So I've got it threaded, and on this end I'm going to go ahead and put a double knot. I'm doing that because we're going to be doing a waist knot to start. And to do that, we need a knot that won't go through the holes in the bag. A double knot seems to work really well for me. I'm going to trim that tail just a little bit so it's not in my way. Now we need to find the center of the bag. Normally you would fold and fold again to find the center. Doesn't work real well on a stiff vinyl bag. So we're just going to go ahead and use our tape measure. And we see that the bag is 9 inches across, so halfway would be 4.5 inches. I'm going to mark that with a little marking pin I have. You can use a needle or anything else that you have handy. And then we'll mark this direction as well at 3 inches. So our first stitch needs to be right about there. Now, waist knot is going to be on the knot's going to be on the outside of our bag. So we're going to go down and then back up in the first stitch. So you want to place your waist knot in the direction that you're stitching. So my line of stitching is going this way. So I'm going to put my knot over here so that as I stitch, it's going to be covering that loose thread on the back side. Now I'll demonstrate what I mean by that. First, I'm going to bring my needle down in an empty spot over there. And then back up in the first hole of my cross stitch, which was right there. There we go. Bring that back up. And now you can see I have the knot on the top, thread running on the back, and I'm ready to do my first stitch. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here so you can see what I'm doing. 2 things you need to remember when you're doing the sewing method is to always make sure your X's are the same direction. It's pretty basic in cross stitch, but it does get confusing sometimes when you're doing the sewing method. So by that I mean if your X's always go this direction first and then this direction, make sure they always look the same. And the other thing you need to do is always plan where your next stitch is going to go. So let's get started and I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to have my finger underneath here, and it's doing 2 things for me. It's kind of poking the bag up where I need it to be, and it's also holding that loose thread on the back so I make sure I cover it. So I'm going to bring my needle down in the lower left hand corner of my first stitch and then back up again in the upper left corner. So I've completed the first half of my first stitch. I'm going to be demonstrating full cross stitches first, meaning I complete my X as I go across, and then I will do half stitch. I'll demonstrate half stitch, where you do half stitch one way, half stitch the other way. I prefer doing full X's when I do this method just because I find it less confusing, but you do whichever way works best for you. Let's finish this stitch and then move on to our next one. So I am in the lower right corner of my first stitch, and I'm going to come up in the upper right hand corner of the next stitch, and I'm using my finger to kind of tell me where that needle needs to go. There we go. Pull that through, and then I can complete my X and go up in the upper left corner of that stitch. So I'm going down in the lower right, up in the upper left of the next stitch. And I'm using my finger on the back side to kind of poke the bag up to kind of tell me where I need to be. It's also making sure that loose thread on the back side is being covered by these stitches so that it's nice and secure. Down in the lower right, up in the upper right of the next stitch. I'm going to zoom in a tiny bit. Okay. We'll complete our stitches this way. Lower right, up to the next one. So you can finish your first stitch, and then you always have to think, where do I want to go next? And in this case, I'm continuing my row across, down in the lower left, up, down, and then over. And I'm going to do a couple more stitches here, and then we're going to change direction. There we go. Okay, now before I finish this stitch, let's look on the back side and see if our thread is secure. And it is. We've covered that thread, so it's nice and secure now. It's not going to come loose. So now we can go ahead and get rid of that waist knot. And to do that, we just pull up and then snip. What that does is it pulls the thread to the back side. And I can see I still have a little tail in there, so I'm just going to go ahead and snip that. If you keep your waist knot closer to the end of your stitching, you don't have that issue. It's all covered. So now we're going to go in the row above, and we're going to be doing half stitches across. So I'm finishing this X by putting my needle down in the lower right, and then I'm going up to the upper right of the next stitch. And here I'm going to be doing half stitches across. Down in the lower left, I'm just going straight up, down over 2, and then straight up. It does help to have your finger underneath there to kind of guide you, and also to push the bag up a little bit to tell you where that hole is going to be and to get the needle in there just a little bit easier. See how fast that is? Now, the sewing method is, some people use the sewing method on everything, linen, Aida, any fabric, and they absolutely love it. I prefer using a hoop myself, or a Q-snap frame or Nurge frame, so I usually only do the sewing method when I'm doing something like this. That's just a matter of personal preference. Some people love the sewing method because it's so much faster, because it really is. If you don't have to waste all your time pulling thread all the way through to the back and then back to the front again, it's definitely quicker. Let's finish this row, and then let's change direction. That's where it sometimes gets confusing. Let's say I need to go diagonally now, up here. So I need to figure out where my next stitch is going to be. So I'm going to bring it up in the upper right of my next X, and then down in the lower left, up and down. I'll do another diagonal stitch up here. So when you change directions, it sometimes looks a little different. Now I want to go diagonally from that lower stitch. So I'm going down to this stitch and over. As long as you keep in mind, I always like to start in the upper right-hand corner when I'm doing my X. So as long as I keep that in mind, I can usually tell where my thread is supposed to go next, where I'm supposed to bring the needle up next. Always going to be upper right. There we go. Now, let's say we're done stitching and we need to finish off our thread. We don't want to pull it to the back and try to run it under, because that's just not always easy on a bag. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm bringing my needle down in the lower right to finish the X, but I'm bringing it right back up again in that hole right in between. So my X is finished and my thread is right up in the middle there. Now to secure my thread, I'm going to run it under these stitches. I'm going to bring it back down into the hole in the middle again, and I'm going to run it through a couple more stitches. Run it through here and then down. Now you can do as little or as much of this as you like. We could end here and go, it seems secure, it's not going anywhere, that's great. But if you notice, it does make the threads a little thicker and a little fuller when you run the thread through them. So I kind of like that look. So I'm going to do a few more here. I'm going to come up in the middle of this row, and I'm going to run my needle through here all the way across. This is why I like to have extra thread. Now you can see the difference here. See how that one is much fuller than this one? This one you can see the bag underneath, and this one you cannot. It's a matter of preference at this point. The thread is secure, I can cut it, it's not going anywhere. But if you like that look, you might want to do it with all of your threads. So down through the center of that one, up through the center of the next one. I'm going to run it through these. And now I can secure my thread. It's definitely in place. It's not going anywhere. I've run it through everything. It's not going anywhere, but how do we end up? Well, I'm going to take my needle down in that center hole again and up through the next hole. Doesn't really matter which hole, just the next empty hole. And I'm doing that so the loose end goes to the back side. So again, pull tight, carefully snip, and it goes to the back side of your fabric. Now I know that everything is in there nice and secure. It's not going anywhere. It's important when it's on a item like this that you're going to be using a lot. You don't want the threads coming loose on you. Now I want to talk about a couple of instances where you might not do the sewing method. This bag that I did recently has a couple of things that I ran into an issue with. This one has a standalone stitch right there in the flag, and then these little individual stitches here. A waist knot wasn't really going to work well because I didn't want the thread showing. And to finish the thread, I could not run all the way through here on the top because it would show, the thread would show through. And on here, there just wasn't enough of the stitch to do it on. So what I did was something a little different, and you may have a better idea, and if you do, I would love to hear from you, but let me show you how I did it. I've got my thread again. I'm going to knot the end. This time I'm just going to do a single knot, and I'm going to leave a tail. Now I purposely left this single stitch to do after I did everything else so that I've got something to work with. So I'm going to go underneath, and I'm going to run my thread underneath existing stitches and let the knot catch. And then I'm going to do another run through the existing stitches and catch that little tail. Catch that tail in there so that now I have a nice good little knot in there. And I can snip this off. Now it's in place, it's not going anywhere. Now I can do my standalone stitch, say it's right there. Let's bring my needle up, finish my stitch, and finish it. Now I can still run my thread under this one if I want to. Bringing up through that middle thread again, run it through this way. It's not enough to secure it though, so I'm going to bring the needle back down through the middle hole there to the back side and run the thread through existing stitches. The most important thing is that it's secure. So to me, having to do this on a couple of stitches is not a big deal. I want to make sure everything stays in place and I don't have to restitch anything. So that it works well for standalone stitches. If you have to do a row of stitches where it's every other one, you may also want to use it when you're back stitching, because that doesn't leave you a lot to, if you use a waist knot, it's really hard to catch that thread. So you might make it work with a waist knot, or you can just use this method. So that's how you use the sewing method on a project bag. Okay, a couple of other things I wanted to mention. Some of the designs, like this one, are shown with buttons from Just Another Button Company. They add a little bit something extra to the design, so if you want to add them, you just sew them on using one strand of regular DMC floss and a thin needle. I used a size 26 and that worked just fine. It has to fit through the holes, and you just sew them on through both holes a couple of times to make sure it's nice and secure, and then knot it on the back or weave the thread back under. So that's kind of a nice addition. Another question I get asked a lot is, do I do anything to cover the stitching so it doesn't get snagged? No, I do not. But what I do is, if I'm storing a pattern and the rest of the stuff with it, the fabric and the floss, I'll go ahead and put the pattern on the side with the stitching, and then everything else goes on the other side of it. So the stitching is completely protected. If I have a smaller bag, sometimes I'll just fold a piece of paper in there and stick it in if I think I need it to prevent the stitches from getting damaged at all. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you give one of these a try because they're an awful lot of fun. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel, and we'll see you again soon.